Hello, hello.
Hi,
Hi,
Meta.
Nancy, darling. Hello. And Rebecca, let me see. Oh, you
Nice to
are.
see you. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy
That's
birthday.
great.
You look great, Meta.
Thank you. Well, I feel great. It's amazing,
Wonderful.
isn't it? I don't think you two know each other. Um, Becky is Becky Hagee. You still use the name Hagee, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nancy Netting was not we didn't share an office, but we sure hung out a lot together at Harvard back in the day.
Uh-huh.
So, right. How are
Yeah.
you both doing?
You go ahead, Nancy.
I'm doing pretty well. Not not as smart as I used to be, I'm afraid, but still thinking, still cooking.
Yeah. Well, what are you doing? You're not teaching anymore, I presume.
No, I've been retired since, I think it was 2012.
Oh yeah, okay.
Well, it's been a
But
while.
you have you still do a lot of horticulture, is that right?
Well, my husband is basically a farmer now. He used to be he was a professor when I first met him. He decided that wasn't really the life for him. Bought some land, started farming, enjoyed it a lot. From time to time, he got a call from the local university where I was teaching. This time this was in Kelowna, British Columbia. It was a branch of, it eventually became a branch of the University of British Columbia at first, but at first we were independent. Anyway, he would occasionally, Tony would get a call from this history department saying, we really need somebody to teach Russian history this year. Do you think he, yes, he would usually accept. And so he got some teaching practice as well. And
Mm.
I miss teaching, but I don't miss all the class preparation and the work. Yeah, you must feel the same way, Meta. I think that's probably
Well,
a
I
lot.
think the thing I feel joyous about is not having to mark papers. That was
Uh-huh.
always the biggest drag for me, the end of term having to read those damn papers. Becky, what are you doing nowadays?
Well, I'm trying, I live in Lion's Head on the Bruce Peninsula, and I'm trying
I
to
mean, I didn't get
Li
that.
Lion's Head on the Bruce Peninsula is where I live.
Oh,
So I sold my house in Toronto, and I don't get down to sing with the Raging Grannies very often, but I'm trying to start my own Raging Grannies here. And we do both genders, any or all genders, anybody who wants to join in the protest, things like financing the fossil fuel industry by the banks. And
oh,
so
wonderful.
the RBC doesn't like us.
Okay, I'll ask you about that in a bit. I see we have Mitja Jagar coming on from, I think, Slovenia. Uh, uh, hello. If you can you hear me yet? Are you're there you go. Hi.
Hello, Meta. It's great to see you.
Good to see you too. Pull your camera around so I can get a good look at you. All right, there you go. You're in Slovenia? Are you in Ljubljana?
Yes, right now Irina and I are actually in Croatia, having a holiday. Irina had some health problems before, and now we finally found 10 days to get here to the
Mm-hmm.
camping site, and we've managed to join you, even though here internet connection usually is not the best one, but it has worked now, which
Well,
makes me
you look
extremely happy.
fine. Yeah, you look excellent. That's very good. Now, one of the things that I invited people to do was say if they wanted to be in a breakout group with at 2 o'clock after we blow out our candles, we'll take our my cake birthday cake is right here. It's a bagel.
Irena, Irena is just preparing our.
So at that time, we will have breakout groups so you can take your cake off and eat it with a small group. But the person, John Pfeffer, is one of the few people who said, "Yeah, I want to be in a breakout group." And he said, "I'd like to be with Mitcha," and he gave. So is that okay with you?
Of
That
course.
you remember? I didn't know you knew each other. How do you happen to know
Oh
John?
yeah, we know each other for decades.
Really?
We know
Okay.
each other for decades, yes.
Very
It
good.
was Otto who was actually a kind of main connection.
Who?
Otto Feinstein. Otto Feinstein from Detroit.
I don't think I knew him. Okay.
I think
Anyway,
you did meet him once
really?
uh,
Okay.
when I
Mhm.
was in Detroit, and then he once came to Toronto with me. But I think that was the only time you met him.
Hmm. Well, I don't remember meeting him, but I'm giving my good wishes anyway. Uh,
No,
and we have a newcomer here, Alexei Prokorenko, who is, I'm pretty sure, connecting to us from Warsaw, right?
That's right. That's right.
Good day. How are you, sir?
Oh, fine. Thank you. It's a happy
Good.
day for me. You're so beautiful. And
Thank
happy
you.
birthday.
I am very happy, thank you. Now we have three other friends here I get to introduce you to. I was just talking with Mitya Zagar, who's in Ljubljana, and we knew each other, I guess, initially through the Pragoj connection.
exactly,
Uh,
exactly.
and
From the 80s.
yes, right. And Becky Hagee was teaching nursing here at U of T. She's been retired for a while, and Nancy Netting. You don't get, I can't turn these on. Oh, I know, I can turn it on a gallery view if I try, and then I can kind of introduce you that way. That's better. Nancy Netting here, up in the left, well, what's my left corner? I guess that pops around, is a retired sociology professor at the University of British Columbia at, sorry, what city?
Kelowna.
Kelowna. Oh, yeah. In fact, I have a young friend who was going to be on this get together today, but she's gone to Kelowna for a holiday. I didn't tell her to look you up, but anyway, I guess Kelowna is a wonderful place to go for a vacation. So anyway, hello. I'm sorry, Mitch. Your lady beside you, I don't see her.
Irena, you may remember her from Ljubljana,
Oh, yes, I
my
do,
wife.
of course. Yes, I know. Hello. I just couldn't get a good look at you. Okay. Here comes Marion Blute. And nice to see you. Well, you're going to have to give your husband a shove to make room for the camera. But no, now you're both in there. That's good.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's Tina, right? Tell me your name again.
Irena.
Irina, I beg your pardon. Okay. Yes, I'd forgotten. I beg your pardon. Here comes Sue, and here come Leslie, Lisa Ferguson in. So we got a group here. Sue is my right-hand person. Every day, so many times a day, she saves my ass. She's my assistant who knows how to do things, and all of the things that I can't do, she can do very well. Marion Blute, where are you? Oh, and Lisa Ferguson. Hello. Hi,
Hi,
dear. How are you?
how are you?
Good.
Happy
Yeah,
birthday.
good. Okay. And here comes John Pfeffer. Now I see that two of you folks already know each other. When you have breakout groups, I'm going to put Mitcha and John Pfeffer together because I just learned that they know each other. I didn't know before. So, hi, John. How's everything? Mitcha is already here. Okay, Lisa, what's happening with you? I haven't seen you in ages. You're here in town, but you might as well be on the moon.
No, I'm in Mexico.
You're in Mexico?
Yeah,
Do you live there?
I am now. Yes. I lost my housing in Toronto. I was
Yeah.
reno-evicted,
Oh,
and I took my landlord to the landlord and tenant board and won some money. and used that to get temporary residency in Mexico.
Oh, for love. Okay, well, good. Okay, here comes my sister-in-law and probably my brother with her. And here is uh, I can't see your face. Yeah, I'm not good at introducing people all of a sudden. Who, where, where's my, oh, I don't know. This Zoom thing will take care of itself. So if you, here we go. Now enter, I don't have to enter a password. No, I don't. Come on, back. This thing is doing funny things to me now, but at any rate, now Marion Blute, show your face. Volker
I'm trying
Beck.
to.
Oh, good. Hi, Marion. Good to see you. And Volker Beck is, where are you? In Darmstadt?
Yes, I'm still in Darmstadt. Hi. Good to see
Hi.
you, Meta. You look great. Happy birthday.
Thank you. And
Happy
here
birthday,
comes,
Meta. I
thank
thought I
you.
was doing great at 82.
Well,
Looks
I
like
tell you, it gets better. I mean, you know, some things go downhill, but other things actually get more fun. Let's see what they do. Hello? Yeah? Yeah, come on in on the Zoom. Well, honey, I can't help you now. Who is this? Who is this? I think it's Joy Kogawa. She says, help me. She doesn't have to Zoom, and I can't do it now. I don't know. Here's my brother, and here's Mitzi. Hello, brother Howard and Mitzi. Can you all see each other? They called me last night, and we had a getting catched up, caught up about family things. But my brother said, the guy with the blue shirt here, and Mitzi, his wife, sits there. So, Marion, tell me what you've been up to. Marion lives here in town. She's a colleague, former colleague of mine.
I was at the ASA a couple of weeks ago in Montreal.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, I went and gave a paper to section the evolutionary, I forget, they changed the name of it now. I think they call it sociogenomics and evolutionary sociology or something.
Weird. Sociogenomics. Does anybody have a any, I don't know why my computer is popping up saying they want a password, but anyway, so you gave a paper on evolutionary sociology, right? Yeah. Great. You still do research on that?
I'm still publishing.
Yeah. Okay, here comes Richard Denton. Richard is a physician in Sudbury and a big-time Rotarian. So he travels around the world and is always in touch with Rotarians who are interested in peace. Hello, Richard.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. How's everything in Sudbury?
Very well. Sun is shining, birds are singing.
Uh-huh.
But actually, it seems fall is coming quicker. Some leaves are starting to turn already.
Really? You know, I just read something on an email that came at me saying there's a spot in the Atlantic off near the equator that is suddenly getting cool, very rapidly and inexplicably cooling large areas of the Atlantic, one spot. Does anybody know anything about why we're having a cold spot in the Atlantic in the middle of August?
Nope.
Have any of you read about that?
No.
Well, just today I got it. So I'm very puzzled by the whole thing. So who's doing something worth describing? Because all of you are engaged with stuff, and I love to know how what you're doing to fix the world. So who can share something about your current activities?
Well, I don't do a lot, but my best friend Gail Greer, that you know, Meta, used to be in the department. She spends all her time on environmental stuff. and she runs a network group across Canada that's constantly lobbying for various climate change things and stuff. She just spends all her time on it when she's retired. So I think that's a useful thing to do.
Oh, that's great. Richard, you can bring us up to date on your various endeavors.
Okay. Well, coming up, of course, is the International Day of Peace, which is the 21st of September, Saturday morning. And so I'm organizing politicians, various members from the community, our poet laureate, some singers, some indigenous people, hopefully, to all do a presentation at City Hall. And this is to educate people about working for peace, what we can do in our own community. So we're trying to make Sudbury become an international city of peace. We already have Sudbury signed or endorsed the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. 19 cities across Canada have done that. And I think there's maybe about 3 or 4 that have become international cities of peace. So we would like to add Sudbury to that.
What's an international city of peace? I don't think I know.
Basically, it's just doing paperwork to tell other cities that you are working on peace in your community. And this can be in a variety of areas, everything from addressing drug addiction prevention, addressing the homelessness, and working on my own thing is to work on nuclear weapons, but elimination, but also erecting peace poles and pollinating gardens, all that sort of thing. So trying to beautify the city and make people more peaceful. Instead of having a police force, we should have a peace force.
Right.
And so, a lot of it is symbolic, but I think that is a beginning and it's concrete. When people can see a peace pole, then they can start thinking about peace in their own lives. Bullying in the schools comes to mind. Then wife abuse, partner abuse, that sort of thing in their own lives. So peace can be involved in a number of areas. We think of these often as positive peace, as well as negative peace, the absence of fear of violence as well. And both need to be addressed. And then, of course, in the world, you look at Gaza, you look at the Ukraine, Sudan, Yemen, all of these other places where in Rotary, we are addressing eliminating polio in the world. And unfortunately, there's now one case of a little boy less than 10 months who has now developed polio in Gaza. So one of the
I
things
thought polio was almost done for 10 years ago. Didn't I read that it was almost gone?
Correct.
What's the matter? Why is it back?
Well, that's it. It's you have to constantly vaccinate people to eliminate that. We have eliminated smallpox in the world, and at several years ago, we were down to 4 cases, 2 in Pakistan, 2 in Afghanistan.
Of polio.
Of polio. What we've done in Latin America and in Sri Lanka is to have ceasefires during war, and during that ceasefire, go around and vaccinate the children. In Gaza, of course, it's much more difficult because they're now in refugee camps as opposed to being in a permanent location. And with vaccination, you not only need to vaccinate once or twice, but 3 times ideally. And in Africa, we were getting sort of 80 plus percent vaccinated first time round, sort of 60% second time round, and 20% the third time round. But if you have a fixed address, then it's much easier. In
Mhm.
Gaza now, their children are constantly being moved from place to place, and there is no healthcare system now in Gaza. It's been completely destroyed. So it's much more difficult. But
Mhm.
again, these are man-made problems and therefore should be man-made solutions to it. When we look
Okay,
at
we've got
nuclear,
some newcomers here I should introduce. Alan Ware, I think, next. Alan, are you in Prague or are you in, where are you?
Yes, in Prague.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Happy
and you
birthday,
have,
Meta. This is the
oh,
happy birthday candle.
thank you. That's
It's better with the
wonderful.
light off.
Okay.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. I hope you've all brought a cupcake. I didn't have a cupcake, so I have this bagel that's
Oh,
going
how
to be
nice.
nice with a candle in it. So when the time comes, I'm well prepared. And Vidrana and Alan and Adam have come in. Vidrana is where I can't see you, dear. It keeps coming up. Uh, Adam says he'll call me later. Vidrana, why is it I keep is it clicking admit for you and then you don't show up? I don't know what's the problem, but there's you're welcome if you can get in. I can't help you. Okay, but Alan, you have after your name the on the same line that you're with the World Future Council, which is certainly a distinguished body. But I have to say, I don't know enough about it, and I bet most people here don't know enough about it either. Can you take a minute or so and tell us what that outfit is?
Yeah, thanks so much, Meta. And I think you probably know me with a couple of my other organizations like Parliamentarians for Nuclear Non-Proliferation and Disarmament. But yeah, the World Future Council is one of my main ones. It's a body of 50 people who have been involved in policy making. I'm one of the members of the council. There are others who have been members of either governments or the United Nations, or have been involved in a civil society process that's got good policy adopted. And this is policy to protect the world for future generations. With environmental or human rights or preventing chemicals and toxics, peace, disarmament. And we do things like the Future Policy Award, which is highlighting examples of good policy that's been adopted and is making a difference. And I actually have to leave early today because we've got the research team here that I'm hosting in Prague for the 2024 Future Policy Awards, which is on peace and future generations. We had 45 policies nominated, and some of them are just incredible. You know, the Rwanda Gacaca courts, for example, that helped pull the nation out of genocide and back into people living together in harmony, or the
Hold
Philippines
on.
Peace
Tell me
Education
about that.
Plan.
This is something that has already happened that
Well, yes, these are policies that have been adopted and implemented and have made an incredible impact on bringing peace and justice in communities and in countries. So we're doing deep dive into them, doing lots of interviews with policymakers, with people who have been impacted by these policies. There's the policy that ended the civil war in Bougainville, for example, and how the women negotiators were instrumental in that, and there was an unarmed peacekeeping force that helped implement it. So we've got a whole lot of policies. I won't go through them all now. We'll come out sort of after this process with some winners, and we'll be doing big events in Geneva with the Interparliamentary Union and the United Nations to celebrate, you know, that there are good policies. There are some good policies out there that are making a difference, and we can have hope that if we expand and learn from the good policies that are building peace, we can build a more peaceful world. It's possible.
Well, wonderful. Bless your heart. And of course, you have been doing wonderful work in so many other ways that you are highly deserving of the award that you got a few years ago called the Right Living Award, which is, I think it's named after the Buddhist notion, some principle that you should live right and you live right. So thank you. And we've got two other people I can introduce now. Vidrana, who's been trying to knock and get in the door and I couldn't let you in or something. But
Hello,
anyway, you
everybody.
look like you made it.
Happy birthday, Meta.
Thank you. Vagina fell off a stool the other day and has torn another ligament or something. So I don't think you want to show everybody your
No,
brace on your foot, but
it's not really sexy. It's not too
no,
sexy.
it's very pretty. Very pretty as these things go. It's a good looking brace. And here we have another person who seems to be in the dark, and I can only guess why you're in the dark. It's Andrei Kamenshikov, who's no doubt calling from Kiev, and I hope you're not in a blackout. Why is it already dark? Is it already night? It's only 1:18 p.m. here. Why are
Yeah.
you in the dark, Andre?
Well, exactly because we have another blackout. We have them regularly now, so about half of the time we're without electricity. So I can't be long. I need to save battery power and stuff, but I
Oh.
want to really congratulate you, wish you health and success in your endeavors and all the very best.
Well, we want to wish you the same by all means, but can conserving your batteries, tell us what you can about what's going on there. How is the war going, as it were?
Well, you get very conflicting news from different sources because the war is going the same way it's been going on for the last 2.5 years, more than 2.5 years now, and unfortunately there is nothing, positive in sight. Some each side, and the sad thing is that it's a situation where both sides feel that they're advancing, and both sides feel that time is playing in their favor. So neither side seems to really be, seriously considering any other option than just to keep doing what it's doing. So, it's kind of sad in that sense. Of course,
Well, I've been watching
about-
what I can, and it looks, of course, you see the Ukrainians advancing quickly in the Kursk area, but then they say if the purpose of that intrusion was to offset the gains that the Russians are making elsewhere in the Donbass, that it's not working. So, from the perspective of the people in Kiev, are most people still optimistic that the Kursk adventure is going to be paying off, or are people getting discouraged?
Well, it's very hard to say because, people in these kind of situations, people tend to focus on what they want to hear. And when
Yeah.
both sides are making advances in certain areas and gains, it's you kind of focus primarily on the positive news for your side, and that seems more important than what's happening on other fronts. So
Yeah.
in that sense, Kursk certainly had it was a very significant psychological and moral boost for Ukraine. Militarily, I don't know. I'm not a military specialist, but today there
Let
was
me
very
invite somebody here to ask you a question, because I bet everybody here has a lot of interest in what's going on in Ukraine. Why don't feel free to ask Andre a question, and then if his battery runs low, he'll say he can't answer it. Anybody with a question? Yes, Richard.
Andre, I'm working with a gentleman, Ernest Thiessen, who has developed a computer program called Smart Settle, which allows many sides to input their weighted requests anonymously towards peace. Are you in any connection with people that that process could be useful for in terms of negotiation? As you say, I mean, both sides seem to be really at a stalemate now. The Russians don't seem to be increasing territory in the east. And now, as you say, Ukraine has made an incursion into Russia. But would this not be a good time now for peace negotiations? And then who would be the people to contact for that? I gather there's numerous countries have tried peace negotiations. It seems, again, the US, NATO does scuttle them, and also putting in preconditions, which of course then prevents negotiations from happening. Your comments.
Well, I don't have, negotiations on the high political level is obviously a important political decision that can only be made by, the country's leadership. And I don't think we're unfortunately in a state where either side, the leadership on either side is ready, because as I said, what's happening, Ukraine was very encouraged by the successes in Kursk and, maybe in other places, but just recently, there was
Andre,
a
Andre, I want to stop you a second because Lloyd Axworthy has just arrived. And I'm quite sure that Lloyd Axworthy and you should be speaking to each other instead of sequentially. Lloyd, I don't know why your face isn't popping up, but I know you're here someplace. And I want to say thank you, first of all, very much for sending me your memoir. I have been looking at it, and I can't say I've read, certainly haven't read it all, but been skimming it. And I'll take more time with it. But one of our speakers here already, one of my friends, is Andrei Kamenshikov, who is a Russian, who's also an American. He's dual citizen of Russia and the United States. He's lived in Russia most of his life, was brought up in Russia, and has been for the last 8 or so years living in Kyiv. He has spent his last 30-some years working as a peace organizer, and right now his role is sort of chairing an organization of peace organizations in Eastern Europe. So he was just telling us about answering Richard Denton's question about the perspective of the people in Kyiv about the war, and I want you to listen to what he's saying, and then and please interrogate him if you can, or
Sure thing.
whatever. Go on, Andre, or maybe you even want to back up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, as I was saying, unfortunately, from a peace building perspective, the situation doesn't look good today, because the war is in a state where both sides are making advances in different areas, but both sides have positive news to report. And both sides seem to feel that time is working on their behalf. And so in that kind of situation, it's unlikely that either side would make serious concessions for some kind of peaceful settlement. Then the other thing is, of course, I'm speaking about both sides, but it's absolutely clear that both sides aren't equal. There's aggressor and there's, Ukraine that's defending itself. So, again, there's a limit to what, Ukraine can do in terms of, compromise, even though I think there are ways in which it could do more than it's doing now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now Lloyd, you may also be familiar with Alan Ware, who's available. He's in Prague tonight, but today. But I'd be interested if anybody has any goods, and Mr. Jagar is in Ljubljana, so these are our main peacenik folks that I think I've mentioned so far. And I'd be interested if any of you have any prognosis as to how to bring about an end to that problem, the conflict in Ukraine and in Russia. Lloyd, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I just came back. I was at the Victoria Forum the last couple of days, and I was on a panel with 4 or 5 people dealing with the whole issue of the repurposing of Russian assets, and which I think is a long overdue, but it's something that has been pushed pretty hard by both our own refugee council who've been working with the federal government. But I think
has Canada taken a position on that? I don't think I know.
Well, sure. I mean, I think originally through pretty active lobbying that we did, we actually passed legislation a year ago that authorizes the government to do a repurposing or repositioning of assets. And they took that proposition to the G7 meetings. There was pushback, as you might expect, from some of the other international players, particularly the Germans and the Belgians, some of the Europeans who were very nervous about mucking into the possession of sovereign assets. But there was a decision taken. So there's about $360 billion of Russian assets held in a variety of European and North American banks and treasuries. But the best consensus that came out of the G7 meeting was that they would use the revenue off the Russian assets to provide a basis for about a $60 billion loan for Ukraine to pay the interest on the loan. And already some of the European countries have actually started transferring some of that money. I think Lithuania and Poland have started doing that. Canada has not yet sort of authorized the transfer of or taking a loan out based on that formula. And frankly, Senator Ratna, Almodovar, and I on the panel continue to push for the repurposing of assets. I mean, I think there's a big difference between $360 billion and $60 billion, and we were pushing to say that if the consensus so far is to go to provide the a loan covered by Russian revenue off the Russian assets, well, that's a first step. It should not be the end game. And then secondly, there is a degree of urgency that one of the discussions points that I raised, because I've been working with the Ukrainian and Canadian Congress, is the need to provide a much stronger support for the rehabilitation, maintenance, and support of the electrical grid in Ukraine. You know, Canada probably through our crown corporations in Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, British Columbia has some of the best know-how, knowledge, experience in the maintenance and the upgrading of electrical grids, which are being, as we know, under a serious attack by the Russians. And we're saying that if that isn't fixed by the onslaught of winter, there could be even further deterioration of morale. I mean, the whole Russian strategy is attrition. I mean, that's how they hope to get it. And so we were putting a strong urge out, and we're likely between us and the Canadian Ukrainian Congress going to be issuing a request to the government to try to mobilize through provincial cooperation the know-how that we have as kind of do training, support, and actually lend some of our fairly highly specialized knowledge and people to help repair the grid system in Ukraine.
Well,
so
that's why I think that's why Alan is sitting there in the dark, right? Some bomb must have knocked out your electricity. Is that your situation, Alan?
Yeah. Well, they have these. There's a shortage of electricity, so they have these, temporary blackouts. Like basically, we have it about half the time of day we have electricity, and then half the time we're without it. So.
Yeah. Half the time it's out.
Yeah, about so. Sometimes for a while it was all right after the latest the latest, you know, just a few days ago there was a massive missile attack that
Yeah.
was hitting primarily you know, the electric grid and, you know, like the power plants, you know, not far from here. So you know, I guess it's, you know, it's having an effect.
Okay, Alan Ware has a question or something. Yeah, Alan.
Response to your question, Meta, which I think is probably not an answer to your question. Like, is there a solution to this war at the moment? You know, and I think, you know, Andre sort of was pointing this out, you know, when he's saying that, you know, both sides are committed to continue fighting. They have narratives that they're using to support that fighting. You know, from Russia, it's a narrative that the Russians were being oppressed in Ukrainian territories during the Ukrainian administration, and that they have a historical claim, you know, to Crimea at least, and even some of the other parts of Ukraine. And from the Ukrainian side, of course, it's like, hey, this is our territory. This is a blatant act of aggression that Russia has attacked. And I think the majority of the world will support the Ukrainian view that this is an act of aggression, but there's not sufficient opposition to push, you know, back Russia militarily. So at the moment, it does seem it's really difficult to like come up with, say, a solution. You know, Switzerland, you know, held a big Ukrainian peace conference, but it didn't really provide a possibility for a solution. It was looking at various aspects to it. But one of the things that I think could be useful, that wouldn't resolve it right now, but might help pave the way for when the two fighting sides start tiring of continuing this massacre of each other, there needs to be a face-saving way to come out. At the moment, there's entrenched positions. So what might be a face-saving path? And I think probably one of the best ways that could assist in that process, provide that possibility, would be for an advisory opinion in the international.
Sound is not,
Sorry, there's someone, I
something's
think it's
wrong with
Richard,
the sound.
and it's not mine. There's noise coming in from someone else.
Okay. Back up a sentence because I missed something completely.
Yeah. Yeah, my suggestion would be a way that might help provide where there is the possibility of peace, but neither side will back down, would be to have an advisory opinion on the rights and responsibilities of Ukraine and Russia with regards to the disputed territories. And if you had an advisory opinion process on that, it could provide a place for both Ukraine and Russia to come and sort of put forward, you know, their narratives, their historical perspectives on the disputed territories. That would provide a breathing space. You know, you could possibly have a ceasefire, you know, while the court case is being undertaken, with each side sort of, you know, reserving the right to start up again if there's no solution. But it could provide something, you know, a possibility. And out of that, as I said, you would have the addressing of what some of the underlying conflict was that, you know, led to the Russian act of aggression against Ukraine. There was an unresolved dispute over the status of Crimea. And there were disputes over what was happening with Russian-speaking people, you know, in the Donbas region. And I think that something like this, you know, an advisory opinion on the rights and responsibilities of Russia and Ukraine would be a way of setting up such a process without pointing the finger at anyone. But most likely, you know, when the facts really put out on the table, I think that the court will find pretty much on most of these aspects in favor of Ukraine, with possibly something novel coming out with regards to Crimea, because Crimea is an actual novel historical situation. And it may be that it provides a possibility for then a negotiated agreement without Ukraine having to cede territory under, you know, the aggression from Russia, and Russia being able to accept something if there is some, you know, some protection or rights of Russia coming out of such a process. So as I say, I don't think this would, you know, like stop the war at the moment, but it might actually help provide a context for a ceasefire if such a case was started in the International Court of Justice.
Okay, I'd like to hear Lloyd's reply as former foreign minister, and that and the comments of Alexei Prokorenko, as well as Andrei again. Andrei and Alexei are both Russians who've left Russia because of the war, or well, Andrei had already left. but both living abroad because they don't want to be killing Ukrainians. Lloyd, what do you think of this idea of an advisory opinion by the International Court? You're muted.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is how much time have you got? The IJC is a very slow-moving instrument, and that an advisory opinion would take many months, if not years, to have a full-born representation statement and then conclusion. So in the meantime, the killing goes on, the war goes on, the civilians continue to be the victims of all this. So, I mean, I think that I must say my own bias, I think, as you know, man, I was very much involved in the creation of the International Criminal Court. We took on a major role of the diplomatic mobilization for it. I'm still of the view, I think, that the investigation of war crimes should be substantially accelerated. I mean, what I think we certainly found it in the case of the Balkans. Once we were able to get the International Tribunal providing indictments of leaders, and it immediately sort of changes the dynamics within the country. If you're an indicted war criminal, now Putin is not going to show up and sit in a docket, but I think that there is certainly a very strong way of affecting opinion, both inside the country, outside it, and certainly for a lot of the countries around the world who are sort of sitting on the fence when it comes to the aggression in Ukraine. So I put more of my sort of emphasis on trying to see if the process of the International Criminal Court could be accelerated. I certainly think that going into the roots of the conflict, but let me just share with you, as you know, I chaired the election monitoring mission from Canada during the 2019 presidential elections in Ukraine. So I spent about 6 months because there was the elections really was a two-step process. And what I came away with just from the pretty broad-based discussions is that Ukrainians themselves, the reason for the vote, the reason why Zelensky became so overwhelmingly popular, is that there was a very tough and I think committed view that they did not want to be under Russian sort of authority, Russian influence, they were tired of the Russians, frankly. And I think that was really, so in any foreign policy issue, you have to have the people on your side. And I think that that's one of the certain equations that Zelensky and his government faces, is that while I think the Ukrainians are properly feeling the impacts of the war or aggression that's gone on for 2 years, I still don't think that there is much room for any particular concessions to the Russians in terms of Crimea and other places. So it doesn't hurt to do it, but one, it's going to take a lot of time, and secondly, I think that it would find itself running counter to the political base of support that the Ukrainian government has.
Thank you, Lloyd. Howard, my brother, has, I think, a question. Howard, speak.
I just want to say, as you know, we talked for an hour last night, so there's not much that we have to offer, but I have to take Mitts to a doctor's appointment at 11:15, so we're going to check out. So you have a happy birthday and keep kicking.
Yeah. Thank you. I thought you were going to ask Lloyd a question. So go ahead, take Mitzi where she's got to go. Take care. Thank you, Derek. Okay, fine. Bye. Now, I think Mr. Jagar in Ljubljana has a question or a comment before I turn back to Alexei and Andre, if they don't mind. Okay, Mitya.
Yes, it's actually more a comment than a question. Namely, I believe that ICC and ICJ actually are two fora that can be consulted and that can play a role. However, I don't think they can immediately have any effect, particularly due to the very known Russian positions, but also some of the positions expressed by Ukraine. So I guess in the long term, it should be used. But in the short term, I guess it is most important that both sides are actually brought to the table. And I've just returned from a conference on mediation and peace negotiation in Switzerland, in Fribourg, which was basically focusing on the situation in Middle East, particularly in the Gaza. But we also discussed briefly the issues of war of Ukraine, of Russian aggression of Ukraine. And the idea was that the attempts like the Swiss attempt of the conference without having Russian side participating actually cannot really lead to any type of adequate solution to this issue. So the question really is how to bring both sides to negotiate. And I guess it is really important to actually as long as there are going to be preconditions, it will be extremely difficult to do anything, as each of the sides that sets preconditions somehow disqualifies the other side. So maybe in addition to ICC and ICJ, one should also consider certain good offices, maybe what Modi has offered and some others have offered. It cannot bring results in a short term, but at least attempts should be made.
Who has offered your last sentence?
It was Indian Prime Minister Modi who
Modi.
offered his good services. And even though he's somehow seen as partial because of good relationship of India and particularly Modi himself with Russia and Putin, it still is a possible way. And I must say that it's extremely interesting also to listen to some of the reactions from the third world that actually somehow say that what the West is doing in the case of Ukraine is pretty much okay. However, the fact that the West does not do the same with regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the situation of Gaza somehow disqualifies the positions of the West. And this is also something that needs to be taken into account.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, I should either Lloyd, you can reply or add anything if you want. Here comes Joanna Santa Barbara from New Zealand. She was going to sleep in because it's the middle of the night for her, but Joe is joining us. But Andre or Alexei, you haven't spoken if you want to reply to a comment.
If I can, because I probably just have a few more minutes of battery power remaining.
Okay.
I wasn't really expecting a big discussion because, we got gathered here to congratulate Meta, but I think that
Well, this is
it would
much
be
more
great.
interesting.
Yeah, it would be great if maybe we could have a separate discussion with who's interested, and I certainly have some ideas by which I believe how I believe Canada can really be useful, because it does have quite a bit of influence in Ukraine due to its strong connections, and uh, and there are many things I think that can be done on the Ukrainian side to put it this way, to strengthen Ukrainian position, not through simply military means, but through maybe more sober and more thought through policies and so forth. And I also want to say that I feel a bit, I understand the good intentions, but I also feel that it's so important to understand that, it's not this war cannot be seen as just two sides arguing over something, a piece of territory or not. It's basically a mid-size democracy, flawed democracy with lots of internal problems, and but that's been invaded by a much larger country that's basically a 21st century fascist state today. And so, this is in a sense a fight against 21st century fascism on the Ukrainian side, even though Ukraine obviously is fighting for its independence. So we should understand this difference very well.
Thank you. Alexei, you want to speak? And then hi, Joe.
Hi, Maggie. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. Alexei.
First of all, happy birthday.
We could maybe have a little discussion.
And this candle is.
Just a minute. Who spoke? Said let's have a discussion.
Yeah. If we could have a little maybe separate discussion, I would be very happy if
I'm always willing to.
Other people
I'm always
could be
willing to
willing
set
to
up.
discuss because I do have some things to share.
Okay, well, absolutely. I will send notices out to everybody saying anybody who wants to have a further discussion, but we'll find a time to do it. Okay, very good. And I'm sorry. Go back, Alexia.
First of all, happy birthday, dear Meta. I'm excited to be here. I'm honored to be here. And this candle is for you. This time it's a bit more real, although it's electric. But it's still there is some flickering, so you can see it's for you today. It's I bought it yesterday for the occasion, especially for this one. And secondly, I would be honored and privileged to take part in a discussion which Andrei has just described, because I may have a horse in that race, so I can also try to maybe at least listen or maybe contribute to the discussion if I can. Thirdly, I would remind of the position which was uttered very aptly by the Nobel laureate Dmitry Muratov, a Russian journalist. I think it was during his Nobel lecture that he said that the Ukrainians is the only force that's entitled to decide on the outcome of the war. Only the Ukrainians are entitled to decide if they want to have negotiations or they want to continue the fighting. And no one else should have an influence on that. No one else has the right to advise them, because it's their war. It's their they're the defending side, and the justice is on their side. So they're to decide on when they want to have the negotiations. But ideally, in my view, just in the best interests of the international law, in the best interests of international community and even Russia, would be for the Ukraine to return back to its borders of 1991, its internationally recognized borders, because everything that's short of it can lead to very detrimental consequences for. So the dictator who runs over a sovereign state will not be punished. He can sell it as a victory to his own population and to many of his supporters all around the world. Russia Today and other propaganda media will claim that's a victory. The price has been high, but he doesn't care about the price. At least they just they remain intact. The dictator is in power. The Crimea is there, and so on and so forth. Any concession to the dictator can lead to severe, drastic consequences. And then we are in for an adventure in Taiwan, God forbid, or anything else of that kind. So it means that anyone who has the power right now, the force, can do stuff which we wouldn't like to happen. And that's the ideal view. But again, I'm with the Ukrainians in their noble fight, and whatever they decide, I will respect. Thank you so much. Happy birthday, Meta.
Okay, now I want to throw in something. Let's say that we do have another conversation for people who really want to talk about this. And some of you may be trapped here hoping that we were all going to just sing and dance or something. And if you're disappointed, I'm sorry, but this is more important than birthdays. Anyway, but if we did have another conversation, I would want to include a perspective that none of you have mentioned so far. Not that I necessarily adhere to it, but I have a Russian friend who claims he's one of the escapees from Russia. He left in order to avoid being sent to war, and he's living abroad. But his view is that there's not going to be a solution to the war on the battlefield, that the solution to the war will occur in Russia because people are going to be so increasingly frustrated and disappointed and annoyed, or some groups of people will be, that the Russian state will either fall apart or somebody will bump off Putin, or some kind of decision will emerge from the domestic situation that results from the war, and that's where there will be a solution to the war. And not only that, but he maintains that it's coming pretty quick. He sees. In fact, I saw a comment a day or so ago that there is an increasing dissatisfaction in Russia, in the population, as measured only by checking with the social media, that you can't really tell much from polls, but by reading what the people are saying on social media, you can infer that they are more annoyed now, to put it mildly, than before, because the invasion of Kursk by Ukraine. This was enough to change some opinions. I don't know. So it would be interesting to see whether we could include that as a credible point of view. I, on the other hand, see people saying nobody will ever really challenge Putin. Lloyd, what do you think?
Well, I was going to ask for an intervention. I think that's why I think it's important for people to get their heads around the importance of the attachment, freezing, and then the repurposing of close to $400 billion worth of Russian assets. Nothing will provide a greater sense of disruption within Russia itself if it loses that capacity. The reason that I and others have been working on, not just in Russia, but the use of repurposing assets, is it's also a way of holding countries accountable for their crimes. And one thing we know is that up to now, the effort by the sanctions that are being passed by everybody is pretty minimal. They're just not having much of an impact. But if you start repurposing assets, meaning right now the money is frozen in the piggy banks. If you start opening up the piggy banks and the money's not there for all kinds of investments, it will have a very strong disruptive impact on the Russian economy. And nothing would probably provide a stronger incitement for dissent and reaction than feeling it in the pocketbook. I mean, I hate to be quite so crassly political, but was my profession for 30 years. And I think it's important that those levers be properly used as a way of applying the right kind of pressure so that there would be that kind of disruption. Putin is not going to respond to pleas from the Indian prime minister or others. I mean, he's a hardcore, old NKVD guy who sat in Potsdam when the Berlin Wall came down and vowed that he would get revenge someday. And I think it's just marinated in his skull ever since. But I think that the strong economic impact, the sanctions, frankly, have not worked very well. Russia, I think you've got all kinds of countries right now where it's sort of breaking the embargo. So all kinds of materials are going to India and China and other places. But if you actually started undermining the fiscal stability of Russia itself, then I think then you've got a bargaining tool or a lever that might provide a real incentive to get to the table.
Thank you, Lloyd. Joan Pfeffer.
Well, I applaud Lloyd Axworthy and all the efforts to try to repurpose these funds. I fear that it may take as long as, say, the ICC to to actually have an effect, given the impact the sanctions have had so far and the willingness of other countries like China and India to come to Russia's aid. But that shouldn't detract from the importance of pursuing such a plan. I think that we've seen a couple of examples of Putin's failure to respond in a quote unquote effective manner that suggests that, yeah, he might be in some significant political trouble in Russia. I mean, the response to the Crocus terrorist attack, the failure to take into account intelligence that
Can
was
you take over
provided
the office?
beforehand, the response initially to the Prigozhin mutiny, and now the response to the Kursk offensive, which must be sending, pretty strong messages to folks inside Russia that maybe this guy doesn't have complete control over the situation as quote unquote we thought before. So I think what your friend told you about the situation in Russia is perhaps accurate, though again, it's hard to predict with a pretty powerful leader like Putin when the cracks will appear and how they will spread. I too have to go at 2 o'clock, but Meta, I want, of course, to wish you a happy birthday, and Miti, I'll send you an email, and hopefully we can we can catch up on another Zoom. But I look forward to a conversation on these topics that Andre suggested and that Alexei endorsed. So please set that up.
I'll invite everybody back for another round. Thank you, John.
That's
great.
I'm gonna have to go at 2 o'clock. I have another Zoom meeting, so my best wishes to you and to everybody.
Wait, Lloyd, I can't hear you. Back up. What?
Well, I'm simply, I have to leave at 2 o'clock as well. I have another meeting to attend to. Anyway, I want to wish you all the best and thank you for the invitation.
All right.
Always nice to celebrate.
By the way, Doug Roach has just sent me his review of your memoir, and he calls it a wonderful, wonderful memoir. So look forward to the next issue of Peace Magazine and his book. What's the title of your book again?
It's my name and my life in politics. 50 years in public service. That's right.
So it comes out in the 1st of October-ish?
8th of October. Yeah.
8th of October. Watch for it, guys. Be sure and get it. I have a copy, and it's a humdinger. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay,
you guys who have to leave. And I tell you what, it's now 2 o'clock. And how many people want to have it? You know what my birthday cake is? I've got a bagel here, and I put a candle on it. So I'm going to light my candle. And those of you how many of you have brought a cupcake or something you have something you can
drink,
you can eat with?
I bought a drink.
Okay, shall we light our candles now? And we'll wait a minute and y'all get our candles going. And
Meta, we can't light candles here. We are in the camping site, but we prepared the cake. It's only the cream has slightly gone by now. So happy birthday to you, Meta, and all the best, and hopefully many more years of working together.
Well, 93 is getting close to enough, but at any rate, that's fine. Okay, I got my bagel here. Does everybody have something to nosh on? Stephen, what you got there? A cupcake, Stephen?
Yes.
All right. Well, I don't think we're going to have any breakout groups. This is just fine for a breakout group for anybody who wants to stay and chat. So let's
Happy birthday to you.
Wait a minute.
birthday
to you. Happy
birthday,
birthday, dear
Meta.
Meta.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Ready to blow? I've got my wish. Yes. There you go.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
I wish to.
I need to say goodbye. I really will
Your
probably turn
battery.
off in a minute.
I'm
So,
worried about your battery too, but at
All the
any
best.
rate, bye, dear. Thank you.
hope to have another discussion soon. All the best.
I'll call
Thank
it.
you.
I'll let you all know. Mm-hmm.
To
Okay.
peace
Bye,
in
Heather, I've
Ukraine,
gotta go
Andre.
too. I have appointment. I have another call. I have to join it too. Okay. Lots of love. See
Is
ya.
that
Talk to you.
who said that? Vadana or
Yes, yes. I've got to
oh,
go. I have 2 o'clock meeting.
okay.
Okay. I'll see you soon.
Thank
Bye.
you. All
Bye.
right, very good. So we can each now chat about what's on our minds in our real lives.
Oh,
I know that I haven't introduced. I didn't introduce Stephen, but he's around. And Cameron here is in a retreat, someplace with a lot of trees. Cameron is my new right hand, and he is well. It's where's Sue go? Because she's I don't know. I can't have two right hands, but they're whatever. Both of them work for me, and they're absolutely wonderful, and it's just making my life so much easier. And a little while ago, I called Cameron for help with how to set up breakout groups. And had there been any, of which I don't think there was, because I had it all planned out, but the people who were going to be hanging out together haven't shown up. He would have been able to fix this if I had need one. Okay, who's got something interesting to tell us about? Otherwise, I'll point at somebody. Joe, I haven't even introduced you yet. It's like 4 a.m. for you in New Zealand, is that right?
No, 6 a.m.
Oh, okay. So tell us what's going on in New Zealand and your work on the climate thing.
Well, yes, yesterday I traveled across the other side of the island. I live on the South Island of New Zealand, and I traveled to a meeting of business people working on climate change. And what my particular bit of that meeting was to encourage people who manage businesses and other organizations to work on cutting commuting emissions, cutting the emissions that come from people getting to work and back each day. So increasing the use of public transport, cycling, walking, and businesses incentivizing employees in various ways to change the way they get around, particularly the trip to work and back. It's a measure that I think has the possibility of significant impact on local emissions. So that's a very, very far stretch from working on thinking through the Ukraine-Russian war to work on the ground to really try to decrease emissions in a local
Well,
way.
I'm sure that the reduction of greenhouse emissions is absolutely as important as any other issue in the world now. You know?
So it seems to me, yes.
Yeah, because we've all been working on nuclear war for many, many years. And honestly, I think the threat of global warming is worse, is more risky, more probable, more unavoidable. Yeah. Hello. Hello, who's this? Helen, honey, I'm on the Zoom. Can you join us? Well, I don't know what to tell you. I can't help you. Sorry, we can talk later. Okay, bye-bye. Helen can't get on, but I can't help her now. Anyway, I just think that there's you know, if bombs don't get us, global warming for sure it will, unless we really do something more drastic than we're doing. And certainly that begins with carbon emissions reduction, but to my mind, it doesn't end there. There's a lot more that has to be done. Anyway, I don't want to hog the conversation. Yeah, here's Richard. By the way, Derek Paul just called me this morning to ask how you and the whole family were, Joe, because he hadn't heard from you in a long time. So I imagine he'll get in touch with you. Okay,
Wait,
here
who was this Metta?
Derek Paul, who's
Oh,
living in Montreal now.
right.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I
Thank
see
you.
Jorge Filmus is popping up and down. Hello, how are you, Dr. Filmus?
How are you? Happy
I'm doing well,
birthday.
thank you. Yeah, well, we've had do you have your cake at hand? Because we are eating whatever we brought to the table. Oh, he popped off again. I guess his connection isn't so good. Richard, were you about to say something to Joe or what?
No, it's great to see you, Joanna,
Mhm.
from our IPP&W days many, many years ago. So it's just wonderful to see you. And I was on a little hobby farm for 40 years up in Kirkland Lake, so can identify with you now in New Zealand. Years ago, in the 60s, my parents were wondering about building a bomb shelter and moving to New Zealand after seeing the movie On the Beach. And so you have now done that. So it's great to see you. And again, I just want to wish Metta a very happy birthday and also mention in the chat that Rebecca was going to sing you a song on her guitar, but unfortunately didn't get a chance there.
I didn't even know that. My goodness. I'm just worried about Jorge, who keeps popping up and then popping off.
Yeah,
I guess
I'm having problems. I don't know.
oh well, but you can hear us, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, well, why don't you speak? If you can hear us, you can speak too. So
No, I just want to wish you a very happy birthday, Meta. I hope that you continue as active as you are now for a long time.
well, we'll see. Tell me, I think you're president of Science for Peace now, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
And tell me what you're up to.
Well, in fact, I have to leave soon because we are having a table at University College has a student fair, this year, every year when at the start of the year. So Science for Peace is having a table there, and we are having this studying this Science for Peace student group at University College. So I'm soon have to leave to help the students there to set up the table and hopefully to recruit more students for the group.
Well, good for you. Okay,
Thank
it's
you.
nice to see you. You're still working at Sunnybrook doing some kind of research, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
What is your research?
Yeah, I do cancer research.
Yeah. Well, any progress on that front?
Well, slow, but going there. But it's never as quick as one would like.
Well, I'm glad you came. We had a good discussion about Ukraine. And we're going to have another discussion. It looks like some people say they'd like to, pursue the conversation a little bit. So I'll see if I can organize another get together for specifically that. In fact, one of the things I want to start doing is bringing together organizations that are working on the same issue. NGOs, just having kind of a conference of NGOs that work on the same issue. For example, I had a talk show about 2 days ago with some people, physicists at Princeton, who have formed an organization called something like Coalition of Physicists Against Nuclear Weapons. And of course, now they've been traveling around North America trying to recruit other physicists to the organization. They have a few hundred, I guess, now. Now they're trying to grow the campaign into Canada, recruit some Canadian physicists. And then I said, well, why don't we have a meeting of NGO representatives of people doing campaigns against nuclear weapons, and just see if we can do more to knit together the different campaigns that so many organizations are doing separately. That we could do more to cooperate with each other if we just kept some sort of ongoing contact. And so by holding these little discussions, I want to create one again on for NGOs working on nuclear weapons. And of course, Richard, right there, that I'm looking at you, Richard. and we can do it with nuclear weapons again. And I think also the same with climate, because I've been very maybe focusing too much in a way on climate. I'm very preoccupied with that. And we might as well bring the climate people together to discuss their common interests. Do you think that's useful? Would any of you?
I actually did publish a book on sustainable development that is dealing with systemic issues of sustainable development, including climate crisis. It's written in Slovene, and hopefully in a few years an English version would follow, because this one was focusing on constitutional changes and reforms in Slovenia with regard to the climate crisis. And I would just want to raise attention to Meta, that I was trying to send you an email yesterday and today, and I constantly got response that your inbox is too full to receive another email messages.
It's not possible. Never, ever been true. Something's wrong. I will look into it. But Cameron, we got to check it out. But no, I've never had a mailbox that ever got too full.
That's what was the message that I received from
I
our
believe
provider.
I believe you got the message, but we will have to check it out, because I don't think it's real. I don't know. Something's gone wrong, but Cameron will look into it. He is really good at that kind of thing. He really he thinks like a computer, except when he's thinking like a chair, or if I ask him to repair a chair, he thinks like a chair. And or if I ask him to replace the parts of a lighting fixture, he thinks like a lighting fixture. And it's very clear. He doesn't go read a manual. He just starts, I don't know whether he meditates or what, but he goes into not a trance, but some kind of space where he and the lighting fixture understand each other beautifully. And I think that's just amazing. Just amazing. Okay. Anyway, thank you, Mitch. And we will look into it. Right, Cameron? We will, won't we? Thank you. Okay. So you want to be part of this conversation when we get another conversation going again about the war? Or exactly what is the topic that we want to talk? I should define it pretty clearly, and I'm not quite sure. We kind of wandered around, but what do you think we should call this next powwow? I don't know. I guess I'll figure it out. Okay. So, Alexi, do you have anything more to say about what's happening in Warsaw and what it's like to be an escapee living in Warsaw?
Well, I have been long interested in the Polish culture, probably since my early years. So that's why it makes it a lot easier for me to kind of fit in, to be part of this country, to adapt, and to. I'm fluent in Polish, so whenever I talk to people, I think that I'm probably more at home here than I was at home. because people are so friendly here, and it's their general like worldview is so close to me. It speaks so profoundly to me that I just I only miss my family, my closest people, my closest pets. That's the only problem, because I don't have that nostalgia that's so aptly described in memoirs and in beautiful books, literature, poems. I don't have that related to places. I only miss my hugging my mother and petting my dog, my cats. That's the only thing I miss. I thought it would be harder.
Well, I've heard other people have a different experience. Some Russians say that they do not feel particularly welcome in Poland, but your case is a little different because you already spoke Polish, didn't you, when you went there? And that must
changes a
make
lot.
all the difference, I would assume. All right. What do other people, and do you hang out with other Russians who are escapees, or do you just try to blend in as a new Pole?
Actually, not so much. We get together during protests, during meetings at the embassy when Alexei Navalny was killed, for example. Then we just sometimes we do meet up together, but most of my time I spend with my Polish friends. Just probably it would be fair to say that 75 or 80% of my words that I speak daily are Polish words. Because it's a good idea to become part of the country that has been so hospitable. That's probably a way to say thanks to that country, and the country is beautiful in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, of course, it's very patriotic. It has strong familial values. So you get excited when you see older people, older couples, holding their hands. It's so genuine. It's so beautiful to see. But at the same time, there be Poles are more conservative than probably most other Europeans. But at the same time, they don't have that aggressiveness in them. For example, the Ukrainian city of Lviv used to be part of Poland before the Second World War, but no one of my friends I've asked about it. As was Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania nowadays. I've talked to my friends about that, to my Polish friends. Would you ever consider going to war against Lithuania or Ukraine to get those cities back, which are actually cultural capitals of Poland? These are significant cities in the history of Polish culture. Would you ever want to get them back to Poland? They said, why? That's what I thought exactly. They wouldn't. There's no reason to claim anyone's territory because it was once yours. That's what I actually love, and in the Poles, and that's very close to me, among other things.
Very touching. Yeah. Well. Okay, Joe, give us a little more insight into your activism there, because you are almost entirely working on climate issues, and I think New Zealand is one way out in front of most other countries already, right? Is that no?
No, no. New Zealand currently has a government that just barely scrapes by saying that it intends to reach net zero by 2050, but is doing very little to accomplish that. A lot of my work is quite local, regionally based, focusing. We're really working with the idea that a lot of climate work has to involve not just government policy, but local government policy and household changes of behavior. So currently, I mean, what I'll be doing today when I wake up and get dressed and get breakfast is working on persuading the local government, which is about to produce its climate action plan, to include more ambitious measures in the climate action plan.
What would you like for them to do that they aren't already committed to?
Big focus on transport, and also having the local government adopt a leadership position beyond what it can afford to do. I mean, things that local governments can do about transport is provide public transport, provide infrastructure to make it easier for people to cycle safely. But they can also adopt a leadership role in encouraging behavior change. So there's a suite of measures that we would like them to adopt to change. I mean, also local governments can do things like changing lanes on major roads to make buses faster than cars. So there's a whole lot of things we'd like them to do that we believe will cut emissions. So a lot of my work has to do with relating to local government in a persuasive way, working with them on their production of policy and promotion. We are hoping, because in any time new policies are issued, there's a period of public consultation. We're hoping to introduce measures that move us towards citizens' assembly type advances in local democracy. So that's something I'll be working on today too.
I'm going to hold another forum with a man about citizens' assemblies for climate change. I've done already, I think maybe over the last few years, about 4 or 5 shows one way or another about citizens' assemblies. And this one is coming up with a guy who's now at the UN. He's founded a new outfit that's going to be doing that. So I'll try to send you the link, because it'd be interesting to compare notes about how you go about this.
Thank you.
I've joined a citizens' assembly myself.
Really?
There's something called the World Citizens Assembly, and I've been on, I think, 3 meetings. They asked me to give a talk about war, because one of the topic they've been working on is war, preventing war. And so they wanted to, as somebody who's been a peace instructor, to talk about war and how to work on it. So I did. And it's a wonderful thing, because now what you can do, see, this group is not local, it's all international. They're all over the world. Sorry, I don't think there are many in Asia, but there are people in South America and Africa and Middle East. And the one I was surprised at first, because it's just like a Zoom thing. Whoever's speaking, the camera goes on him or her, but there's an automatic translation text.
Wow.
So they will speak in their own language, and it will be, because I want it in English, the English version will be instantaneously up here flowing across the bottom of the screen. So I can watch as their mouth is moving, I can see what their English word would be. And frankly, it's not very good translation. So far, these automatic translations are definitely not very reliable, but they're certainly better than nothing. I can follow, understand what it is. It's just that if you wanted to type it up and read it, you'd be ashamed to send it to anybody. But I can follow what they're driving at.
Astounding.
It is. It means, to me, what it means is that we could have, the next time we talk about having a parliamentary assembly at the United Nations, adding it to the UN, the bodies that exist, the Security Council and the General Assembly and so on. We should do it as a citizens assembly. People could sit in their own living room and run the world, as a parliamentary assembly, because that's all that they're doing is they have a topic they want to talk about and they talk about it in their own language and no problem. It's just wonderful. Yeah. Cameron, do me a favor and ask Angela if she'll come to join us and see if we can get her to tell a little bit about the Ontario Clean Air Alliance is doing, okay? Yeah, he's up in a cottage and Angela, his partner, I know she's there because she came to the camera earlier, and she is the outreach director of the Ontario Clean Air Alliance, which is primarily concerned with opposing nuclear power things. I think probably, Richard, you have contact with them quite a bit, don't you, Richard? Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Angela. Good to see you.
Hi, Angela. We've been having a conversation about all kinds of things that we're doing, and I thought we ought to include the Ontario Clean Air Alliance and what you and maybe Richard do that might be in common. What are you up to? Tell the world.
Thank you. Happy birthday, by the way, Meta.
Thank you. I am happy.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
And hi, Richard. So I don't know where everybody is from, but I work with the Ontario Clean Air Alliance. We're Ontario based, and we focus on moving Ontario to 100% renewable energy future. So our first campaign, we're small. We came together in the 90s to call for the coal phase out, and Ontario did phase out coal. We were probably the first jurisdiction in the world that did so. For environmental and health reasons, by 2014, we had phased out all our coal. And then we turned our attention to phasing out nuclear and gas. And, when we okay, you're all frozen on my screen. Can you hear me?
No, but you're jumpy on ours, and we hear you very well, but you kind of look funny. But don't mind, don't worry about how you look. We want to know what you have to say. So keep going.
Okay. Right. As long as you switch one coal phase out and turned our attention to nuclear power phase out, because Ontario gets the bulk of its electricity from expensive, dangerous nuclear power. We lost all our funders, every one of them except one from Quebec. And we completely had to switch channels and fundraise from individuals because the foundations weren't going to support our work anymore. Then after a few years and not getting a whole lot of traction on the nuclear campaign, the Doug Ford government was elected and they chose to ramp up gas. So polluting gas, fossil gas, the previous Liberal wind government had reduced gas down to 4% of our electricity system, and they were phasing it out, ramping up renewables, ramping up efficiency. And then Doug Ford canceled all the renewables and efficiency programs and started ramping up gas. So we turned our attention to phasing out gas at that time, and that campaign got a lot more traction. And so we've gotten 30 municipalities, 60 NGOs. The world knows we need to phase out gas. So that's been our primary campaign. We've never dropped the nuclear campaign. And in fact, the focus on phasing out gas, the solutions that will phase out gas will also phase out nuclear. So
How
it's
so?
got the same ends, but
How
strategically we're focusing on
how
because wind
oh, because you replace everything with wind.
water, solar,
Mm.
wind, water, solar, hydroelectricity from Quebec, conservation, batteries. Like whole world is moving in that direction, and most countries do not have nuclear power. So just because Ontario has it does not mean that's how we need to move forward with rebuilding our aging nuclear infrastructure. We're not saying shut down the nukes tomorrow. We're saying no new nuclear investments, and all future electricity investments should go to clean, renewable future.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we've outlined it. But also that's the possibility. It's very realistic, and that's the direction the world is going. And Ontario instead, they're ramping up gas and they're ramping up nuclear. So they're like, we've already got 18 nuclear reactors. Now they want to build 4 new experimental SMRs at Darlington. They're rebuilding all 8 reactors at Bruce Nuclear Station, which is already the largest nuclear station in the world, and they're doubling it now. And then they're rebuilding the Pickering Nuclear Station, which is already one of the world's oldest and least efficient, like most expensive nuclear stations. And it's surrounded by 2 million people within a 30-kilometer radius. So within the evacuation zone, easily within an evacuation zone, 2 million people. So, and they were supposed to close it down a decade ago. Now they're extending its life till they want to extend it till 2026 and rebuild 4 of the 8 aging nuclear reactors. So we've costed it out. It will cost all these nuclear expansions more than $150 billion. No public conversation about it. Let's put that money instead in, and let's put that bill in like renewables are 1/3 the cost. We could put wind turbines in the Great Lakes, like so Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, Lake Huron. The provincial government has done a study. We could put wind turbines in the Great Lakes at 60 different sites and power the entire province just with wind turbines in the Great Lakes. And we're not suggesting we do that, but we're suggesting we should lift the moratorium on offshore wind in the Great Lakes, start putting wind there, more wind and solar on land, no new investments in gas and nuclear power, more batteries, more electricity exchange with Quebec. They've got massive surplus, especially when we peak, which is the summer, because they peak in the winter. So we could be using their surplus power in the summer when we are peaking. And again, the province has done all the studies. We could expand along the existing transmission corridors between the 2 provinces, purchase more of their water power. They're buying more wind power. They have extraordinary potential for more wind in the north. And we could be buying their wind power instead of building new nuclear reactors. But our province is so entrenched with this status quo of nuclear and gas. That's what OPG and Bruce Power are, the largest utilities in the province. Together, there are about 10,000 nuclear workers on the Sunshine List. So they're all making over 100 grand. And they are protecting those jobs. So to change course is always a difficult thing. It'd be easy. It was a lot easier to phase out coal because we weren't mining the coal in Ontario. And there's not that many jobs in the coal industry, like running a coal plant. It's the same thing with gas. We're not mining the gas here. We're buying fracked gas from Pennsylvania, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. So it would be relatively easy to shift off gas. And that's what the previous Liberal government was doing. But to actually shut down those nuclear stations, so we're saying it's too expensive to keep these stations going. Let's slowly make the shift, phase out our nuclear stations, and we're going to need those nuclear engineers to deal with the waste, which is going to be around for a million years. How do we protect the residents around the stations? How do we manage the waste? And, you know, the environmental community has certain answers for how to do that, which is different than what the nuclear industry is proposing, which is a DGR, a deep geologic repository on native land. Yes, so
Now,
that's our agenda.
Why hasn't this caught on? Because I don't see it happening. What are the prospects that you can make this into a campaign or something that people will be aware of?
Okay, good question. So how we won the coal phase out is we built public support, we got municipalities on side, and then the provincial parties, opposition parties got on side. The Green Party, the NDP, the Liberals, they all campaigned during an election year to phase out the coal plants if they were elected. And just weeks before the election, there was so much pressure on the governing Conservatives that they agreed to phase out coal. So it became an election issue. Now with nuclear and with gas, we've pretty much got the Liberals, the NDP, and the NDP and the Green Party. Those three parties are pretty committed to phasing out gas. But they're for the most part silent. Well, they're for sure silent on the nuclear file because there's huge numbers of jobs associated, and they're unionized jobs associated with the nuclear industry. So the Liberal Party historically has always been pro-nuclear. It's like there's such an entrenched nuclear lobby, and there's so much money involved in that. That $150 billion is gonna go to all these spin-off industries, steel, you know, all the different industries that are gonna reap the benefits of that $150 billion. So there's so much money involved that any party, like whenever the NDP in the last provincial election, they said that they were going to close the Pickering plant. And Doug Ford went out there with his whole team of nukeheads and they did a press conference. They said, the NDP is going to shut down jobs in this province. We're going to keep the jobs. We're going to extend Pickering. So it's like,
okay, listen, I want to get Richard's thoughts on
an
this.
entrenched.
Can we let Richard
be already
speak on this question, whether or not you see
Yes.
because you're coming at this from a different or institutional or organizational angle, Richard. I don't want to spend much more time on this because I see Nancy Netting is getting antsy. She says she's got to leave now, and so that means that probably a lot of the rest of you folks need to leave soon. But so I want to give Richard maybe the final word, but anyway, close to the final word on this.
Okay. Well, first of all, I thank Angela and agree with all that she has said. I think in terms of nuclear power, it's extremely expensive and it takes 10, 15 years to build. So it's not the new plants aren't going to resolve our climate crisis immediately. And we haven't found a solution to the waste yet. From my point of view, with nuclear war, of course, nuclear power produces the components of nuclear weapons. And without nuclear power, you're not going to make nuclear weapons because that's where the components come from. The small modular nuclear weapons are strictly for the military. The military realizes they have a problem with long supply lines of fossil fuels, and so they want to eliminate those by bringing in small modular nuclear reactors. And so that's why they're getting governments like Canada to work on developing these. These are not for the Arctic. They're not for Indigenous people. I mean, we've got numerous Indigenous communities that don't have safe drinking water, which is a very simple problem. And you think you're going to introduce a highly technical solution like nuclear power to them. That's just not going to work. So this is strictly for the military. And again, with these small modular nuclear reactors, you're still going to have the problems of accidents, miscalculations. You're going to have the problems of producing waste that we haven't got a solution for. And they too will produce components for nuclear weapons. So,
okay, now look, I'm thinking, it seems to me that it's been like 20 years ago that it was understood that that people who are in the anti-nuclear weapons business were divided about whether or not to support nuclear power. And that is a very touchy subject. If you want to go to a peace movement meeting and talk about nuclear power, it's like you've done something slightly impolite, that you should not do that. We should just give everybody distance so we don't run into this dispute again, because it's so emotional. But everything that Angela was saying and that you've said reminds me that the two issues are linked, that we have, for rhetorical purposes or politeness purposes, we have compartmentalized them and we treat them as not causally connected, that we can deal with one question separately from the other. But maybe we have another conversation about it. By now, after 20 years of trying to be nice and keep our distance from each other, maybe it's time for another conversation about, are these things separable, or should we have another go at reaching some sort of understanding about the necessity or the importance of emphasizing renewable, wind power or whatever, the proposal you just said, the Great Lakes and stuff. That is such a good thing for climate change people. It's such a good thing for anti-nuclear weapons people. So why are these three things kept in separate baskets? Am I mistaken, or is it worth trying to organize a new go at that issue?
I think it would be worthwhile to have a new go. You are quite correct, Meta, as always, that there are the two camps, and they certainly do not see eye to eye. At the United Nations, when we got the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, again, nuclear power was separate from that, and it was allowed in that. The International Atomic Energy Commission has 3 points. One is to prevent proliferation of nuclear weapons. Two is to eliminate nuclear weapons, which they're not doing at all. And three is to promote nuclear power, which they are doing front and center. So the IAEA is an excellent organization on promoting nuclear power. So I think that there are countries, and even in my own organization, as Joanna will remember, the IPPNW, that too has the two factions. One wants supports nuclear power, and the other is against nuclear power. So
Can you estimate which side is gaining? In the, you know, haven't seen any polls lately, but you know, it might be that the nuclear power proponents are gaining now. In which case, I don't know whether it is a good idea to have another go at this, because I don't know that there'd be any closer getting any closer to consensus. I don't know. Do either of you have a strong impression as to whether there are political opinion changes about these matters, or have been in the last, say, 5 years?
Yeah, let me jump in. Is that okay, Richard?
No.
Go ahead,
Thanks.
Angela.
So, thank you. So nuclear power sort of peaked around the mid-90s at 17% of global energy supply. And now it's down to 9%. And so governments are not investing in nuclear power, and the financial community is not investing in these new SMRs. So the only people that are so because of competition with renewables, because of Chernobyl and Fukushima, countries have pulled away from building new nuclear reactors, and also the existing nuclear fleet is coming, you know, that was mostly built in the 70s and 80s. And after Chernobyl, most countries stopped building nuclear reactors. So these reactors are all 40, 50 years old now, and they're shutting down much faster than they're opening up. And renewables are a big part of that, because the price of renewables are so much cheaper that it's crazy to build new nukes. So the only countries that are building new nukes are countries that have centralized systems of government that they subsidize. So they're not free markets. So China, Russia, Canada, and France are sort of the countries that are investing in new nukes. Now, post Fukushima, or, you know, around the Paris Climate Accord 2015, the nuclear industry rebranded itself as small modular reactors. We can produce small reactors, not these big mega reactors, and they started promoting it, but they haven't been successful at getting private investment. So at this point, there's only 2 SMRs in existence connected to a grid in China, and I think 2 in Russia, and they're both way expensive. They're experimental. So when they say that they're modular, small modular nuclear reactors, it's total bullshit. Wind and solar are module. You can get economies of scale with them, because you're building millions of them around the world, millions and millions.
Yeah, Angela,
2023,
Angela,
the world produced
yeah, what I want to know is public opinion. Whether or not public opinion has moved one way or another significantly in the last 5 years or so.
If I may also add to that,
Well,
namely
what we
nuclear.
Yeah, Mitch.
Go ahead.
I would just like to add that nuclear lobby is actually quite strong, not only in the countries that were mentioned, but also in Scandinavia and some Baltic countries. In Slovenia right now, there is ongoing discussion on new nuclear power plant. So actually, this nuclear lobby is actually quite strong and is lobbying, and the arguments, that the rational arguments that it's actually more costly and that it's particularly in a long term actually as dangerous as some other fossil energy production, does not really stop all these initiatives to actually build new nuclear power plants, or at least some new reactors. And unfortunately, all of those who are in favor of renewables, who are in favor of um, CO2 reduction and other these gases that actually increase um, global warming, we simply are sometimes in a way marginalized by this massive investment by a nuclear lobbyist. And I'm afraid that this battle has not been won yet, but it needs to continue, and we need to actually stress how important it is to develop all these alternative approaches.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, Joe.
I think one of the alternatives that we need to think about is reducing energy demand. And it's not much talked about. I think the potential for energy conservation, increased efficiency, and simple behavior change, both on municipal levels and household levels. The potential for lowering energy demand is not very much tapped and is significant, I think.
But I think that the reality is that there's going to be an increase in demand.
That's certainly the projection. You know, if we want our landscapes covered in solar panels and wind turbines, to meet an ever increasing energy demand, that's what the scene would look like. But we don't have to use as much energy as we do. We're extremely wasteful with energy because it's been so cheap.
And what Joanna is saying is extremely important, namely the technology for passive housing already was existence in the late 1940s and 1950s, and still we haven't reached even that point. The so-called active housing was available in 1990s and is still being developed. And nobody is actually really very much interested in investing in that, as decreasing demand actually does not benefit all these monopolies of companies that are selling all kinds of energy. And this is a major issue. And unfortunately, here also media are not very much interested in promoting those ideas and those problems.
And I agree. I'm so sorry, Meta. I must go. And
it's almost 3 o'clock here.
Yeah.
So I've held everybody up for ages, enjoying your presence with so much joy. It is just, I just feel good. And thank you very much for coming and participating and sharing. And I hope you got something out of it, because I got a wonderful boost. And I've learned some stuff too. So thank you all. Let's say goodbye.
Birthday.
Happy birthday, Meta. And let's continue this for years to come.
All right. I'll do my best. Bye, friends. Love you all.